The NBA regular season tips off this week, and as part of the preview here at Chucking Darts, let's have some fun and talk about the teams that we are most confident exceeding or underperforming their over-under, make some title and MVP picks, and kick the season off right. Welcome to Chucking Darts, a podcast of informed, rigorous, reckless, harmless, speculative, and fun predictions about the game we love. You can call me Chuck. This should come out as episode number 234. It's being recorded before what should be 233, which is a ranking of offenses 1 to 30 and a look at the Toronto Raptors with the great Esfandiar Barheni. The last one that I've recorded that is out right now is ranking defenses 1 to 30 and a look at the Brooklyn Nets 5 first-round picks gambit with Lucas Kaplan. So please check both of those episodes out. And hopefully, if you've listened to both of those before you've gotten here, you have an idea of where I stand on where teams will fall on offense and on defense. And that means that it's time to synthesize those two and really just get off some predictions about this NBA season and who will break out, what teams will surprise, what the playoffs will roughly look like. And in this episode, myself and my esteemed guest will declare a champion. So without any further ado, Jack Quantrill, host of the Drop Step, a dear friend, someone who I got to meet for the first time in person in Summer League this year, and whose feed I appeared on talking about 2028 Olympic rosters for Team USA. Jack is a Brit and very graciously decided to extend his colonial arm and talk about Team USA in that episode. So check that out on his feed. That also happened to drop the same week that I think Zach Lowe and Bill Simmons talked about it. So, we planted the flag first. That's all I can say about that. It's nice to know that you are influencing others in the space. Jack, how are you?
Chuck, did you get the DM from Zach and Bill saying, "Thank you, do you mind if we use this?" I think I just got it because sort of it was posted on my feed, but obviously we came together for a good episode. I am just brimming with excitement. The preseason has sort of come about at the exact same time that I've got really sick of the first half term of school.
Oh,
So I've just tried
great.
to sort of survive the school. I've kept abreast of what's going on in preseason, but I'm trusting my long-term analysis when we go into this. And come Tuesday, the sleep schedule is back to being well and truly sacrificed once again. So I'm looking forward to true basketball being back. As good as it is to sort of try and make your inferences from these sort of 20-25 minute stints from these starting lineups. I'm just I'm gagging for Tuesday. I'm gagging for the opening slate to
Well,
get here
well,
soon.
that and you commitment for you to League Pass looks much different than commitment to us spoiled little ingrates in the States because all these games, the Eastern Conference slate probably tips off what around midnight for you every day,
Yes.
which means the West Coast slate tips off at a robust 3 in the morning. I mean, that's what a true ball knower will do to themselves, which is as you get older, take increasing risks with your health to make sure that you are watching not highlights like Adam Silver wants everyone to do who can't
Uh-huh.
afford his streaming services, but just watch in real time as much hoop as you can. You're the man. You're the man.
I've said it before. It tends during the regular season to be downloading the game and watching it on the train in. Basically, on the train into work, I have about an hour's commute, so I can forward 3 throws. I can get through everything. But
Sure.
I'm gonna be watching 82 Boston Celtics games this year because I'm writing for Celticsblog, so it's gonna be a different experience this season. And I'm worried that my sort of unbiased analysis comes to an end this year, and I become a true sort of sees Homer, but maybe that gets me hired by the people that we spoke about that stole our podcast idea.
Oh, the Ringer
Bill
folks?
loves a Celtics fan,
I don't know.
so
I don't know why it would make a difference if you covered the Celtics, but yeah, with that publication, I
yeah,
is Noah Dalzell, does she still work for Celticsblog? And
she
okay,
certainly
so
does.
excellent. That's awesome. I mean, she's great. Her work is
Mhm.
great, and yours is good too. So that will yours is great too. I didn't mean to rank you beneath her. But Celticsblog will be destination writing, as it usually is. I mean, they've had a litany of talented folks work for them over the years.
Much like the Boston Celtics franchise,
That's
hopefully
right.
it's just another jersey that goes up in the rafters after a long and successful stint. But I don't have the confidence to rank their season just yet. Perhaps I'm scared of a fan base that I'm trying to get in touch with. So I'm not going to be talking about the C's today. Chuck, who are you confident about? Why are we doing over
Yeah,
unders? You
yeah,
said
yeah,
that you
yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to sort of
Sure.
explore it, right?
Because I thought, look, I try to stay away from draft conceits on my podcast. I do one mock draft a year after the
Yep.
draft lottery. Speaking of which, did that this year with Keandre Ashley, a freshly hired scout for the
Yes.
Boston Celtics. And I'd like to, I don't want to take all the credit for Keandre. No, Keandre's amazing. But the point is, I think with over under season, and I am not a big gambler or anything like that, but I find over unders to be very, very fun. And I think the
Mm.
way that I'd like to go about doing them rather than to have some 4 hour extravaganza, which you can find on the Simmons show or on Ball or on
Yes.
Ball's prediction of the Simmons show. Uh,
That's the best way to consume it for me. As soon as the accents start coming out, it's a shame that we didn't get enough Rosillo this year, but I do like that. If I had to rank them, it would be,
yeah.
ball meta over unders
And
as my number
I'm
one
sure
pick.
once that show is up and running on Barstool, he'll have his version of it, and it's fine. Like you can't
Yeah.
fight market saturation. You can only just try to do it your
Mm.
way. And to me, the way to do it that's fun is to sort of draft an over or a under that you are very confident in. And we're just going to go back and
Mhm.
forth for a little while, probably, five apiece about ones on the board that either one of us really likes. You will have the first pick, but this is about sort of, I guess you would call it drafting locks, so to speak. Your first pick should
Yes.
be your most confident. This team will either hit or fall short of their number, and we will go from there. I won't say what numbers we're using, but they're all pretty close no matter where you look, which is fine. Uh, so, are you ready to go? Because the first pick is yours.
100%.
Go for it.
You're a very gracious host as ever. When I went to do this, I basically in my head tried to rank each conference 1 through 15 without looking at the over under titles. Having said that, I have listened to a good sort of 6 hours of over unders pod, so I know roughly where the numbers are at. But I didn't want to be influenced and sort of go like, oh, I wonder if it'll be 1 or 2 wins away there, 1 or 2 wins away here. And the team that I had lowest in comparison to their over under, sort of based on where I've got them ranked in the conference, is a team that has previously been really close to my heart. I think just last year, I spoke to you about how the guy that runs this team is one of my favorite GMs in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But the Memphis Grizzlies have a
Mm-hmm.
39.5 over under. And due to the curse that seemed to befall the Grizzlies for the past couple of years in terms of injuries, I think I'm going to take their under as the number one pick in our over under locks draft. 39.5. Way too high, loads of injuries, different sort of organization motivation, in my opinion, as well. So that was my first sort of thing that really jumped out to me when I looked at this exercise.
Okay. Very interesting. I think their number last year that they won 48 games last year, as
Yep.
I recall, and ended up being the 8th seed. And so the injuries that have trickled in for them. Jaren Jackson Jr. hurt over the summer. Zach Edey hurt over the summer. John Morant tweaked an ankle a few weeks ago. Ty Jerome injured his calf last night in the preseason. I'm actually looking up right now if there's an update on that status, but go ahead. You have it.
Scottie Pippen Jr. out for 12 weeks, according to today as well. But I did look, Jaren Jackson Jr. made his preseason debut either last night or 2 nights ago. So that's one sort of out of the fire back into the frying pan for now. But already this is not the way that you want to start a season in a loaded NBA conference.
No, but apparently Ja is saying he's going to be ready for the start of the regular season, and Jaren Jackson apparently is going to be ready too. And those are the
Hmm.
two most important components.
Mm.
So, though they are nicked up, are you just looking at this and saying, I just don't think it's ever going to be healthy enough to click? Or is there something about the structure of the roster that you think means that they're not going to be able to reach this number?
I'm not a massive fan of the front court with Edie out of there. I think that there's a large drop off without him being able to play sort of 25 minutes at the five every night. Desmond Bain is a massive loss. I think that they're going to try and integrate Cedric Coward, who we're both sort of respectively high on, but he played
Mhm.
his first basketball or first competitive basketball in a year over the last couple of days as well. I look and I see a team that will have at least one lottery pick, probably, when you look at sort of either having that Phoenix Suns or the Washington Wizards pick in the 2026 draft. It's a loaded class. And I just wonder if it doesn't go right this year, if they've almost started the soft reset and we could get to a stage where, let's say, one of Jaron, one of Jar sees an extended period not playing, then suddenly you start to reevaluate where this season is going to go. You start to reevaluate how you have built your roster. So I just think that they're sort of at a crossroads now. And if this season goes well, they'll be able to reload in a certain way. But if it doesn't, they have very easy avenues to get out and they have a lot of motivation to try and double up on the lottery picks in a loaded 2026 draft. So I think that there's a combination of injury, roster change, and sort of in lack of intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, so I think that that narrative that you lay out is certainly understandable. And for a team that just acquired all those picks for Desmond Bain and traded them to
Mm-hmm.
Orlando, I think that was an acknowledgement that they needed to pivot a little bit and that they were maybe consciously going to take one step back for two steps forward. I think that Bain trade is a big reason why this number is where it is. Irrespective of the injuries, I think the number was likely to come in around this. However, I didn't pick the Grizzlies over or under. I sort of stayed away from that team for a
Sure.
couple reasons. One is what you mentioned at the top, which is your respect for Zachary Kleiman and their ability to evaluate talent. Over the last
Yep.
couple of drafts, um, I've really liked the Grizzlies' ability to identify talent. And though they've lost some with Bain and LaRavia, now a Los Angeles Laker,
Yep.
there is still that spine of Ja and JJJ, which I think when those two were on the court together last year, they were plus 11 per 100 possessions. Jalen Wells, who was a starter as a rookie for, 60 plus games seemingly last year or around there, a first team all rookie selection. You would assume natural improvement there. Usually with
Mm-hmm.
rookies, ones who survive their first year usually do take a step their second year. Um, and I think Brandon Clark, I think, is hurt, but Santi Aldama is healthy. They still have Vince Williams, Cam Spencer, Gigi Jackson as guys who might claim some additional minutes. Caldwell Pope was the salary coming back from that Bain trade. And to me, there's enough here where if it's like, I think they have enough to where if Ja and JJJ stay upright, I think they can get to this number. That's sort of
Mm-hmm.
the point I'm trying to make is I still think that the team has built up enough talent that Ja and JJJ are not going to be sunk by peripheral injuries. It will take one of them probably going down. And if the team is healthy by Christmas, let's say Jerome and Edie are back on the court by then, and uh Scottie Pippen Jr. is on his way, then I think they can win, at a 40 plus win clip from then on if everyone stays
Yeah.
healthy. But it's also strange because like a team like that is not really used to embracing the tank. I guess you would say the back-to-back drafts they got Jaren Jackson and Ja were the last time that happened. But given their market, uh, if they have these guys who are in their primes, seemingly, JJ had a great year last year, and though Ja has had a trying couple of years, age-wise, he's right where he should be. I still
Yes.
think that there's a way for them to pass the number. So do you think that as like a final question, if everything goes
Hmm.
right for them health wise, how good a team do you
Yeah.
think they are in that circumstance?
I could see them passing the number for sure, but I am still concerned by the fact that they went 12 and 16 post All-Star break last year,
Mm.
having sort of really lit up the regular season in the first 50 or so games, and they did have decent health then. I think that, yeah, maybe there's a scenario where they are let's say a seventh or an eighth seed, right? Just sort of plucking it out the top
Yeah,
of my head. But when I went through this exercise prior, and you know how much prep time I had. The audience knows that I spent weeks and weeks thinking about this.
that's right.
Um, Essentially, I just see far too many scenarios where it's more likely that Memphis slides down a really, really competitive Western Conference than slides up. And if your ceiling for me is seventh, and traditionally that's sort of like let's say around the 44 win mark,
I mean, they were eight
perhaps it
seed
could
with
be a little bit
48
higher.
wins. Yeah, I
That's
mean,
that's a good point. See, we're
yeah,
talking about the prep time here, but you get my point. I just think that
I do, I do, I do.
I I just think that they top off. I'd be really really surprised if they won 48 games this year, 45 games this year, having lost Desmond Bain, going into a season where they do have these injuries, particularly to the front court. Like I worry about Brandon Clark being exposed to 30 plus minutes a game potentially again.
Mm-hmm.
I worry about Jock Landale having to come in and play stints. I think there are a lot of people that are big fans of Santi Aldama, and I really like Santi Aldama as well, but he was more deployed as like a huge three at times last year when they wanted to play with Jaren Jackson Jr. than going with those two at the 4-5 spots. So it's almost like I'm racking my brain. Who is it that they do slash don't have? And yeah, maybe Marvin Bagley is suddenly just like, the guy for them, the sort of
Is he? I
restoration
thought he was a
projects.
Wizard. Is he a Grizz?
I think he's now back on the Grizzlies.
You might
Not
be
back.
right.
I think he's now on the Grizzlies. I think it happened at some stage. I've got their preseason lineups here. Here we go. PJ Hall. PJ Hall. Yeah, I suppose Marvin Bagley must have gone back at a certain stage, but he had a short stint there last year.
Yeah.
PJ Hall's the guy they brought in who had a good summer league. It's just like I'm not enthused.
That's okay. No, like I said,
Yeah.
I wouldn't pick it one way or the other. And so to me, it's in coin flip injury territory, which with over unders you do need to take into account because injuries have much more of an impact on than like we would like to admit on these outcomes. It just is the
Yes.
case. And so I totally get it. Totally get it.
Hmm.
In keeping with your sort of elegant, measured sensibilities, you went
Hmm.
pessimistic for the first pick.
I
I
did.
am going optimistic for pick number 2. To me, the safest bet, my biggest lock, uh, is the Milwaukee Bucks to hit their over of 43 and a half. And I surprised myself when I really went through it, and that was the conclusion that I came to a little bit, but that's where I'm at. And so
Mhm.
I think, first of all, that this number is informed by sort of the Giannis trade talk or saga a little
Hmm.
bit. I think that has sort of depressed it. Even if it's not a prediction that he's going to get traded in February, then maybe it's a prediction that like the vibes will follow the team the whole year and that will have some sort of negative impact on their win total.
Yeah.
I don't really buy that at all, and I certainly don't think the Bucks would undertake such a trade in the middle of a season. I don't think
Hmm.
like he's going to be on the Bucks all year. Number 1.
It's malpractice to trade a star of that size mid-season. It never happens, does it?
Uh that's right.
Franchise
Yes,
icon,
that's true. Thankfully,
European legend.
it's I think that the Milwaukee Bucks brass knows what they have a bit more in Giannis than maybe Nico did with Luka. But
Hmm.
I think broadly speaking, I think of this stuff in terms of offensive and defensive rating. My defense episode, which I've already recorded, but is certainly out now. I had the Bucks as
Yes,
somewhere in the middle of the pack. Nothing special defensively. I think the team is more offensively tilted, but with Giannis and Miles Turner, who I think is sort of like a standard average defensive center, and some of the vets they have on that team, Portis, Kuzma, and Kevin Porter Jr., I do not personally care for, but they've been in the NBA long enough and have enough athleticism and size that they can execute a defensive scheme. Even Doc Rivers' schemes tend to be kind of vanilla, pack the paint, get back on defense, that sort of just take away easy money. But I feel like they'll be able to do that. And it gets to a point where I think they're not going to be any worse than like 17th or 18th on defense, is what I would say. I think they are firmly in the middle of the pack, maybe with a ceiling in the top 15 somewhere.
sure.
This optimism is about their offense. I think that this team is a top 10 offensive team with a ceiling of maybe getting to like fifth. That is how good I think that they can be. And that obviously is chained to Giannis's health and requires Giannis to remain healthy. Uh,
Yeah,
but this number is 43 and a half. And if you have a top 10 offense and a not horrible defense, then you should be, especially in the East, mid 40s easily, easily. And with any, I guess, any sort of fortune in close games, that number can get into the 50s very, very quickly. And the reason why I think the offense has so much potential is that I think very highly of Miles Turner as a schematic offensive advantage. I think it gets lost a little bit because he was paired with Halliburton and these other
yeah,
talented players in Indiana. But when that, and I talked about Turner a couple of episodes ago when I had Brian Geisinger on, but when he switched and signed with Milwaukee, the focus was on the fact that they waived and stretched Damian Lillard. And I think the focus was
yeah,
also on the fact that the Indiana Pacers were, I guess, somewhat shrewd in using the pretense of the Halliburton injury to like not overpay and go into the tax on Miles Turner. I think the
yeah.
Pacers are benefiting a little bit. Um, I think they're just getting a little bit of a pass for just literally never paying the tax because their team literally never pays the tax, but that's a different discussion. Miles as a shooting big is not like he's not, Carl Anthony Towns in terms of volume and diversity and efficiency, but he's proven himself as a stretch center. He is a
Hmm.
legitimate stretch center, and that means that the paint will be pretty vacant in Milwaukee, which is less clutter for Giannis. And Giannis had been playing with Brook. Brook Lopez can stretch as well, but Brook slower release. His minutes had been going steadily down as he was getting older. I just think Miles Turner is in his prime and ready to confer that advantage. And as Giannis draws more and more help, the spray threes, including two Miles Turner who can attack a closeout in a pinch, are going to be there. You couple
Mm.
that with Gary Trent and AJ Johnson, or not, pardon me, AJ Green,
Yep,
AJ Green, who are like
yep,
verifiable high volume 3-point gunners with, again, whatever, Kuzma, Porter, Cole Anthony's on this team. And you're going to get a lot of guys getting looks at the rim, like easy assisted looks at the rim, in my opinion. I also believe that Ryan Rollins is an underrated swing piece in the regular season for like Eastern Conference seeding purposes. If you look at on-offs with the Bucks last year, like the Dame minutes were just not very good with them. But when Dame was off the court and Giannis was on, and Giannis was on with Ryan Rollins, and Rollins, for those who don't know, is like a very solid defensive guard with some point guard chops, what I call a switchblade guard. Maybe not of like the freaky athletic talent of a Jalen Suggs or a Lou Dort, His career has been slower to develop, but he just got a good contract from Milwaukee to stick around. And I think that he is good enough to eventually start in their starting five. I think you could see him start, Kuzma come off the bench, and have it be him, one of Trent or Green, Porter, Giannis, and Turner. And I think there is enough balance in those lineups to where I just think that offense could be really, really good. They will have answers for just about any defense with how they're going to space, and having Giannis, I think that they are not going to tail in their effort, which was initially a concern of mine, just thinking about Doc Rivers, but Giannis really doesn't abide any sort of lack of effort. And I think if all they have to do is win 44 and Giannis is healthy, I think they blow past this number and they're more in 48 to 54 range at the high end. So I
Yeah.
think they could challenge for a top 3 seed in the East. I think that offense is very underrated, and they would be my pick.
So they were definitely on my board as a team to pick when I was going through. I had them slated at fifth in the Eastern Conference, just sort of off the top of my head. And I think that you
Mm-hmm.
made some really, really good points. You know, Miles Turner on top of making it easier for Giannis and providing sort of a really nice continuity in having the space in five. He is a more versatile offensive player than 35, 36-year-old Brook Lopez. He's capable of doing something off of sort of one dribble, maybe two at a stretch, but he can operate in more spots on the floor, I suppose. And he's also going to make pick and rolls much easier for the guards that Milwaukee have, and they do not have the highest quality of sort of starting guard in the NBA. Like in an ideal world, you don't want Kevin Porter Jr. running 20 to 25 pick and rolls,
No.
particularly when Giannis isn't starting. But the fact that you only have to get the ball to the guy at the free throw line or even above in that sense. He's been a talented shooter for the last couple of seasons. He's been a talented shooter from the mid range, from three. I think that he's really going to sort of synergize with what they have going on. And I've been listening to the Thinking Basketball series over the summer, and they've
Sure.
done a really, really fun thing on like the top 25 peaks of the 21st century. And one of the things that stood out rather to me, was the fact that Giannis is the least star dependent offensive star that they tracked in their 25 player series, essentially, regardless of whether he is playing with Damian Lillard or whether he is not, regardless of whether he is playing with any all star that could even include like a Chris Middleton, for example. The offense remains consistent. Put guys that can shoot the ball around Giannis Antetokounmpo, and good things happen. He essentially leads teams to around like a +7, +8 offensive rating in general. And that bears out when you look at 2024 to 2025, like with Giannis on the floor and no Damian Lillard last year. The Bucks were a +9.3. They had a 123.2 offensive rating in 916 minutes. And with Dame and Giannis on the floor last year in 1,200 minutes, they had a 118 offensive rating. So
Right. 5 points per 100 worse. Right.
it there is a slight issue once you get to the sort of like top end of roster construction and you are really aiming to vie for a title. But the Bucks are not doing that this year. If they do it, it will be one of the most Herculean championship wins that we have ever seen. So in terms of just finding that floor raising offensive player who also, like, yes, Giannis is one defensive player of the years, but in years past, I don't think he's that same defensive force. But he's not a slouch on the defensive end.
That's
He's
what
not
I'm
going to
saying.
take
Yeah.
anything away. Like
And that's where I
they're
was
just
just
going to be
like,
able to put lineups where everyone's at least a 5 out of 10 on both ends, and one guy's a 9.5 out of 10 on one end and a 7 out of 10 on that end. So it's
right.
it's just going to work out. They're going to be fine. I think
and
that's a really
and
strong
and
pick.
the organization has a mandate. There's no such pivot as is
100%.
going on in Memphis. So
Yeah.
they are balls to the wall, win as many games as possible, impress
Hmm.
Giannis as much as we possibly can. I would be stunned if Giannis remains healthy and they do not hit that number. I like
Yeah.
absolutely stunned. So yeah. All right. Your pick. Go ahead.
I'll go optimistic now, and I'll stick in the Eastern Conference. I love what the Orlando Magic did over the summer. Their
Mm-hmm.
over under is 51.5. I'm going to smash the over on that because I love so many things about this
It's
team.
at
I think that,
51.5 now. That's what you're
yeah,
saying?
that's what
Okay,
I've got here. What
51.5.
did you
Okay.
have?
Either 51.5 or 50.5. I had seen both numbers.
To me, it doesn't matter. Like, Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bain, Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr. is a lights out starting five. It's backed up by Anthony Black, Goga Batadze, Tristan Da Silva, Jonathan Isaac, Tyus Jones, Jace Richardson, Noah Pender, and Mo Wagner when he decides to grace the team with like his offensive punch off the bench. I think that and I remember you discussing this with Lucas. You had them at around like the 6-7 range on the defensive ratings because of their
I,
sort of
I
propensity to foul, but that
yes.
could be higher. Um, I'm excited for a Banchero leap with some added spacing on the floor. I'm excited for Franz Wagner, who had an incredible Euro basket. I'm excited to see Jalen Suggs, who will not have nearly as much offensive responsibility as he did in the 2 seasons past. And I think that Desmond Bain just sort of fits as well as any player could have when you were looking at that Orlando Magic team, say 3-4 months ago when their playoff run ended. So I would not be surprised if they are the 2 seed in the East come the end
Mm.
of the year. And I think that they could get well above the 55 win mark in my estimation, because I think that the famous Acklow stat that they've been a bottom 10 offense since the dawn of time, that will cease this season. I think that they will have a decent offense this season. And preseason is the best place to find meaningful analysis. And they have had a 122 offensive rating in 4 preseason games. So book it in. They're sort of Boston Celtics in 23, 24. We're looking at a championship team.
Sure. Um, okay. I think I did not lock this. And if I
Mm.
had, I mean, because this number has gotten pretty high, but if I
Hmm.
had to pick it, I would lean with the over as well. I do think they could have a top five defense, propensity to foul, and also Jalen Suggs is already hurt, and Jalen Suggs tends
Yeah.
to get hurt. Jonathan
Yep.
Isaac tends to get hurt. I just knocked it down just a skosh from the top defenses, but they could crack the top five for sure. But Jack, I would never accuse you of baiting me because you're not a baiter, but I really do feel like I could just run back what I said on your feed in talking about Paolo with the 2028 Olympic
Of
conversation.
course, we did this, didn't we? Yeah.
Yes. And so I will just direct people to that episode and to your feed. Um my feelings on Paolo are that he is a talented, very physically gifted kid whose head is in the right place, but the ball needs to go into the hoop. And
Mm.
I on that episode of yours, you were like, well, look at it. Look at they had the worst 3-point shooting of whatever the modern era. It was like 31.8. And I was like, well, what was Paolo's 3-point shooting? And you were like 32.0. And
Yeah.
that's sort of my feeling in a nutshell. Again, like the team has constantly been very good with Paolo off the floor and
Mm.
has struggled to basically outscore opposing starting units with Paolo on the floor. And there's some noise in those numbers because Paolo has only been in the league 3 years. Like as a young player, especially with a lot of responsibility, you're not expected to be a positive initiator among the class of
Straight
initiators in
away.
the NBA immediately. So I am budgeting in room for growth as well. But as much as I like Bain, as much as I love their depth, because they've got a lot of, I mean, Tyus Jones is on this team for like break glass in case of a 2 week injury kind of thing to right the ship. I think Jace Richardson does have a chance to be a pretty positive rookie in a supplementary role, 15
Hmm.
minutes or so off the bench. I think Tristan Da Silva is going to be better. He had a very good Eurobasket, and I think that he can be a real rotation shooter for them as well. I think sort of Franz Da Silva Bain lineups I'm very interested in for their offensive ceiling, perhaps. Like they've got a lot of buttons to push, which is where I would lean over. I would just say that I I'm not ready to say that Paolo's going to pilot a 55 win team. I'm not there yet. The offensive efficiency still spooks me. They're
Yep.
sort of what they're going to do in the clutch is still kind of spooky. And so I'm withholding judgment. I could offer you a gentleman's wager that the Bucks finish higher in the East than the Magic, which I feel like most people would not take. But I think there is an underrated chance that those two teams are very, very close. Um, that's how I
I
feel though. I would lean your way though. I would lean over.
I think I would be ungentlemanly to accept that wager. I think that
Oh,
we're no, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Um, yeah, we've had the debate before. Go
we
back
have.
to the podcast. I just think a couple of percentage points here for a guy that has had an incredibly hard job, for a guy that is still going to be 22 when the season starts. I'm just banking on the leap happening with a slightly
I,
more
I
favorable
I
offensive
totally get
context.
it.
And
Yeah,
like you said, if it does, if he does get the right side of efficient, even if it's just sort of like league average true shooting efficiency plus the addition of Bane, there is a potential for them to skyrocket past this, right? To the 55, 56, 57.
I
So
mean, if the Paolo leap happens, yes,
mm,
they could get to 55 plus. I think
yeah,
what is more likely is that their ceiling is maybe around 54.
okay.
But if the Paolo leap happens, then obviously, yeah, that ceiling gets blown away. I just don't foresee that leap in the same way, is what I would say. But
Are you
yeah,
excited to, because I don't know if we discussed him as much, are you excited to see Bane in this new context?
of
Because he's
course,
sort
yeah,
of played around.
I 2 episodes ago I had Sam Sheehan on, and that's when we spoke
Yes.
about that fit a lot. But
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I mean, I love Bane to death. It's more, and I think uh, not to belabor it, but I think Paolo as a young player, he's a young on ball initiator. And as a young on ball initiator, like he isn't a ball popping, low dribble player. He likes to hold the
Yes.
ball and dribble a little bit. And I think if you want
Yes.
to properly weaponize Bane, you need to shrink Paolo's dribbles and give him more handoff reps and everything like that so that you're really weaponizing Bane's
Hmm.
movement skills, which is what he is best at. So
Mm.
there's still, I think, some stodginess, some creakiness to be worked out of that offense, but the fit is potentially really, really good. And I actually foresee more of a development from Paolo in that area in terms of his approach than I do necessarily in the percentages. His percentage is taking some massive leap, but that is can still be a meaningful improvement for sure.
100%. Let's
Yeah.
see. I mean, like we said, next time we meet up, Chuck, there'll be some sort of wager that has happened, and that there will be pie in one of our faces, and
That's
I'm sure the
okay.
other one will be very, very gracious about it,
That's
regardless. I
that it,
promised that I would be, and I know that you would be as well. We've got
we
that kind of
that's why
relationship.
we get along is we're just a couple gracious gentlemen. But
That's it.
my next pick would be another over. My picks
Hmm.
are going to lean over because it's the preseason. It makes me happy. The smarter way to
It's a
do
bit more
this is
fun.
to bet unders because optimism is taken advantage of by these lines makers, but that's whatever. I would
Yes.
say, again, over again, 43.5 is the number. Western Conference, San Antonio Spurs. Um,
Nice. They
again,
would be my next pick.
so there you go. This is just a like again. I Victor Wembanyama in the same way. If people think Giannis is a top five player, and I believe most people do think that, I think Victor Wembanyama is a top five player. Like right now, you want to get ahead of whatever leap you can with these numbers if there's a leap to be made, which was your case with Paolo. I just
Mm.
think that the number, which is low because it's the Western Conference, and I think most people are saying, well, the West is really good. And then my retort to that would be like, Wemby is better than like all but two people in the Western Conference. So it's really just sort of how you frame and think about this team. I get some skepticism both with the Fox injury and with the shooting around Wembenyama. I am not really big on Steph Castle as a shooter, although I think he had a better season as a driver and finisher than I anticipated as a rookie. I think Dylan Harper will have some growing pains, but he will also, I think, flash. Carter Bryant, as a rookie, I don't think is ready to really contribute offensively, and I think his minutes will probably be lower than maybe some Spurs fans would like to see.
Yep.
But uh, just the guys that they just have rounding out the back of their rotation, guys like Keldon Johnson, Kelly Olynyk, Cornette, Julian Champagny. These
Yep.
are pretty functional offensive players who either are good shooters or good solid drivers who can score. And rather than focus on the shooting talent around Wemby, and again, I think it's underrated because of guys like that. I would like to focus on the shooting talent that Victor Wembanyama possesses. Because when you talk about 5-out centers, he
Mm.
is like the present and future of that idea. I think lots of people look at Victor and they say, we want to see you down low more, which I understand. I'd like to see him down low more. And there's pictures of him working out with Hakeem Olajuwon. And that's great. You would love to see a man who's 7'5" dominate down low. But if I were, again, just the way you frame how you think of him, if I were to say that among players 7 feet or taller, he is further along as a shooter than any player in the history of the NBA, I think most people are like, what are you talking about? And I would say
Hmm.
I might spot you Kevin Durant. If you believe Kevin Durant is a legit 7 feet, I would say that Durant's was probably further along the shooter at the same age. But if you look at guys like
That's it.
Cat or Jaren Jackson or Porzingis or Dirk Nowitzki, even, I think at the same age, because I believe Victor turns 22 in January, if not mistaken. I think Wemby is a better 3-point prospect, better free throw shooter than any of those guys were at that age. Chet Holmgren, too. And so I don't know that everyone is properly conceiving about what that shooting talent can look like in
Hmm.
year 3. And you couple that with the fact that I think they are likely to have a top 5 defense because of Victor Wembanyama. And I think that their offense, again, I could be a rascal and say I think the Spurs will finish with a higher offense than the Magic. And I think that, again, I don't want to stop betting against the Magic. I like the Magic. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that, like, I think that there is an underrated chance that the Spurs have a top 15 offense. Top 15 offense, top 5 defense. Again, I think you're in the upper 40s comfortably. And so that's why, again, with the ceiling, I think there is a ceiling of a 50+ win team here. I think where they could land more realistically is anywhere from like 46 to 49, but that clearly beats their over. And so they would be my pick.
Zero issues. I love the shooting point. I think that that's really prescient. I've really loved some of the preseason tape that we've got to watch where he has been operating in lots of different areas of the floor,
Yeah.
experimenting with some very funky Hakeem-esque footwork, like the step through highlight that's been going around today, where it's like he
Oh,
picks up his dribble 18 feet away from the basket and then lays it up. That's not from Space Jam. That happened in preseason today. It is a deep roster. The thing with Wemby that I'm really excited to look at is like the big to big passing. I think that he is a massively talented interior passer because he
mhm.
just has access to angles that other players don't have. So you can talk about it any which way you want. He is going to amplify the talents of every single player on that roster because he is purely additive in terms of where he can spot up, where he can operate on the floor, how he can help, guards as being the largest lob target, with the largest catch radius in the league. That's going to be really, really fun to watch. Like, I'm excited to watch Dylan Harper. I made the case with Claytheist or Charlie Cummins the other day that he could be like a dark horse Ben Gordon candidate
Sure.
where he wins like, six man of the year and rookie of the year. Yeah, that
That'd be
that could
great.
be really, really
Yeah.
fun.
I'd be down for that. Sure. Gonna be
It's
gonna be tough with this rookie class, but I would love
yeah,
that.
of
Yeah.
course. of course, it was dark horse for a reason. We were outside of the odds. I had him as a fun six man guy, but like Cornet is a great addition. I really like Devin Vassell. The roster continues to be deep. I wonder if they start Champagny because he's had a really good start to preseason, and I
I
think
think
that
they should.
spacing
Yep.
is essential. And yeah, do you want to do a sidebar? Because I did notice that you said he's perhaps the third best player in the Western Conference, and I was ready when you said, "Are there any other takes that you want to get off your chest?" to say, I do think that Wemby is already the fourth best player in the league, and I do wonder if by season's end he could be better than that.
Yeah. I mean, we were going to talk about MVP later, but I said a couple episodes ago, this is still how I feel. I think MVP functionally is a three-player race, and I think it is Jokic, Shea, and Wemby. I think those are and again, I know Luka Doncic is out there. I know Anthony Edwards is out there. I know Jalen Brunson or Kate Cunningham or whoever in the Eastern
Surely,
Conference is out there.
surely if Giannis, like you
I
said,
know,
if they're
and
if they're a
Giannis is
50
out there
plus win
too.
team,
I'm not
that
saying he
narrative is
wouldn't be.
there.
I'm
But
not saying that Giannis would not be a candidate. He would be a
okay, cool,
candidate. It's
cool.
just that I think of MVP as like guys boxing each other out. And Jokic boxes just about everyone in the league out. The first thing you need to be an actual MVP, have a chance of winning the award, not get votes
Yeah,
or finish fifth, of winning, is you need to have a statistical profile comparable to Nikola Jokic. And that eliminates 99% of the
yeah,
league.
yeah.
So the players who can actually match his statistical output are probably Giannis can do it in the right circumstance. I think Wemby with his defensive dimension can do it. I
Yep.
think Shea did it last year, so you have to give him credit. And I think Luka, again, in the right circumstance, can. But
Mm,
Luka suffers from not being a great defensive player and just not being as efficient as Jokic. So to me, Jokic kind of just boxes Luka out. And I just think that that's how that goes.
cool.
I think Shea, by a similar token, if the Thunder are better than the Wolves, which I expect them to be, even though I like the Wolves, I
Yep.
think Shea essentially boxes Anthony Edwards out. And so Giannis, you look at Giannis, and if they do what I think they can do and win 50 plus games, Giannis is going to be discussed heavily.
Mm,
But if they are no better, even if they make the 3 seed in the East, which would be an outstanding accomplishment, if
hmm.
Jokic is the 2 seed in the West, I just think Jokic boxes him out because
Nice.
there is such a perception that the West is so much better than the East that I just don't see how anyone can do that. But if the Spurs in the West get to like a top 5 seed and they're a 50-win team, then Wemby will have the statistical profile and he will notably have people saying that he is much, much, much better than Jokic at a big aspect of basketball, which is like one side
Yeah,
of the entire floor. And that's to me what gives him the theory, the potential path ahead. It's that he has that. Shea has 65 wins potentially. So he has a chance. I understand Giannis's potential candidacy, but I think you're playing in the JV conference is it's just hard to imagine him being voted over all of those other Western Conference guys. And so that's where I come down on it. Yeah.
fair enough. I think there's a chance that Giannis still gets like the defensive reputation of a few years ago, where you sort of get the
Maybe.
argument of like, oh well, he's 95% as good as Nikola Jokic on offense, but look at the player he is on defense. And even if he doesn't necessarily have the season where he has the defensive onus on him and sort of spearheads them to a top 10 top 5 defense, I still think that there's a chance that that comes up in the argument because when you watch them just play a game of basketball, people think very quickly, well, I can tell which one I think is going to be more impactful on the defensive end. But I get your point about the conference discrepancy. And The boxing out is a very good point, and I think that we have seen it in seasons past. It's like,
Yeah.
oh well, Giannis's PER is 30, and it's like, well, Jokic's PER is 35. Moving on. Let's go
Yeah.
from there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, your pick. I think we've each had two. Go ahead.
Um, I'll take the Sacramento Kings under. They
I
are
was
slotted at 35.5. The West is a bloodbath. Keegan Murray is injured. There are not a ton of functional 3 and D wings, and I put bracket like wings
mhm,
forwards on this
mhm,
team. I
mhm.
really like Neat Clifford, but I just think that the roster balance and mainly the starting five balance is going to be off for the first 30 to 40 games of this season. And that's not even talking about the Keegan Murray injury. That's just talking about the fact that you are still going to have DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Domas Sabonis all sharing the starting lineup. And then what? It's going to be Malik Monk and maybe to start Keon Ellis or Neat Clifford and then Keegan Murray will come in. I suppose Dennis Schroeder could play as well. It's just
Russell
they seem
Westbrook.
to
Yeah.
me, yeah, Russell Westbrook. They seem to me to be like severely outmatched in a Western Conference, and they have a team whose construction reminds me more of the early 2020s, late 2010s than the 2025s. And I don't think they're going to be fit to sort of pressure full court necessarily, especially if you're asking players like DeMar DeRozan and Domas to cover up on the back line. I don't know if they're going to have the shot profile. I could go on forever. I think that this is going to be a really sad and disappointing season for the Sacramento Kings. So that's why I've got their under, although they have massively outperformed this number in seasons past.
They have. And this was on my board as well. I
Mhm.
agree with the under. And we now we really feel like we're piling on given the general media uh just dump on the Kings that's happening this week. And I don't want to stick on this team for too long because you said it.
Yeah.
I just will say I think it is funny given Vivek his obsession with the Steph Curry Warriors that after the Warriors have gone through the ringer here with this two timelines deal, which I was never really a fan of, that the Kings are doing like the weirdest, most like Black Mirror two timelines approach that you can possibly imagine with like the 2023 Chicago Bulls plus DeMontis Sabonis is their present timeline.
Oh yeah.
All of the guys they've acquired like since 2023, Neek, Keon Ellis, Devin Carter, even like Isaac Jones, but Maxime Reynaud in this past draft. I like a lot of those players, and I think that they can be positive supplementary pieces. It's just, and maybe Scott Perry feels the same way. We know how he feels about Zach LaVine. He does not feel the way that Jack Quantrill feels about Zach LaVine. There is a real difference of opinion there.
Get him out of
But
there.
with Schroeder and Russ, like, do those two play together? If they do, is Russ supposed to be like, what is his role? Where does the ball go? It's
The
very weird. I will just say that there are players, again, mostly on their bench that I like that I think can help. I will also say that Sabonis, for his playoff limitations, a big reason they've outperformed this number is because Sabonis can just beat the crap out of a given team on a given night
yes.
in
Yeah, yeah.
January and get his like 23, 18, and 7 assists. Like
Yes.
he is a real regular season floor raiser. And the more I thought about this, though I still lean under with
Mm.
you, is like,
Hmm.
what do I think? What do I think they're going to win 25 games and lose 57 with this roster? I don't. I think
Sure.
their floor is maybe around 31, 32, like a 50 loss team I could see.
Hmm.
But if that's the floor and the floor is just like 3 wins under their number, I can see them getting there. Like it is a pretty low number. I could see them in the 36 to 38 range, but I agree that again, if forced to pick, it would be under. It was on my board.
Yeah, I've got 35 and a half here. That's what I got. That's what I pulled just before, and
Exactly.
it
Right.
just it's yeah. I get what you mean. Like there is a world where they still have an incredibly disappointing season and win 36 games, but
Right.
the princes of Sacramento need to lead a good old coup d'état civil war against the old despotic rulers, the current Sacramento Kings, and start a nice, healthy rebuild where they can add young talent, perhaps even around like a Sabonis, where it's he seems like the kind of guy that can help young talent develop potentially if they can shoot and sort of like it can be a really nice environment for players to sort of find their feet in a way that I think quite a few players did on the Kings when they were the Beam team a couple of years ago. But it just feels a little bit stagnant, a little bit icky at the
I
moment.
I
So,
I agree. They have the ick, so to speak, as people
and
younger than me like to say.
did they transfer their pick last year?
I don't
I think
know.
they did.
I don't know if they owe their pick or not.
I think last year their pick went to someone maybe Chicago. I don't
Well,
know.
they
They
drafted
picked Neat Clifford at 24,
at
didn't they? And they
24,
definitely didn't have,
the
that
20, right,
those
right,
lottery
right.
odds. So they must have transferred their pick. So there's also the argument that come the end of the season, if Scott Perry can pull off some Jedi mind control on Vivek and the like ownership in Sacramento, there can be a hey, this is a really, really good draft class. Let's try and move these guys on. Let's try and reload because at the moment
Hmm.
we're bringing a knife to a gunfight every single night.
So I'm glad that we've talked about or we've mentioned Neek Clifford a couple times. Neek is
Mm-hmm.
the truth. I love Neek. I love his
He's great.
preseason. I loved him as a prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Maxwell and Corey. A lot of guys at No Ceilings have been on Neek for a while. Rafael Barlow, like he was a draft darling, and I had
Yes.
Neek as a lotto selection in the 2024 draft, and he went back to school. So I
Nice.
I love Neek. Play Neek. But when
Mm-hmm.
you have to get through Westbrook, Schroeder, and Monk and Levine for minutes, I'm just like,
Yeah.
guys, please. But I think, I do think that he and Keon Ellis are going to force Doug Christie's hand. It's just a matter of when that happens. And even then, Neek will have growing pains like any rookie, but like he is an all rookie. He is like a first team all rookie talent and ceiling if he got the minutes. I just wish that he did. And shout out Maxime Reynaud. Haven't forgot about you. But I think some Sabonis Reynaud lineups in Keegan Murray's absence could be kind of fun. But again, it takes sort of a I guess an audacity bordering on dementedness to really trot that out before January or something. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Proper
speaking,
Back to the Future. You kids aren't ready for that yet.
but speaking of dementedness, my next pick. I don't know if
Oh,
anyone can see, but I'm wearing my handy dandy New Orleans Pelicans
they're on my
shirt.
board.
The New Orleans Pelicans over, which I believe right now is at 30.5.
Mm-hmm.
Um, look, the New Orleans Pelicans, I think, are benefiting from the fact that the Kings exist right now because right around draft time, the analysis and the vibes around New Orleans were much stinkier than they are now
Mm.
with that trade. Again, this is a team that does not have their pick, so they're going to try to win games because why not? Because they do not have their pick. But
Mm-hmm.
that was before Skinny Zion. And again, I'm just trying to go off what I know. What I know is that if Zion is healthy, I know it's a big if, but if he plays 60, 65 games or something like that, um, he is going to generate layup after layup after layup, good shot after good shot. And that alone would almost be enough for me to say like they can win 31 games if Zion's healthy. I mean, give me a break. But when you throw Trey Murphy, speaking of, my
That
guys, you
episode.
throw
Yep.
you throw Trey Murphy on top of that and where I think Trey Murphy could go and how high I think of his ceiling. you can all of a sudden, and again, I'm Jordan Poole, I think, is not a great two-way player, but has offensive talent. And I don't think playing with a guy like Zion now with Jordan Poole a bit older and in his prime, I think you can get to interesting things if DeJounte Murray comes back, which I guess he maybe by Christmas or January. Like, you can have enough offensively talented veterans on that team to where I could see them with an offense, maybe around 12th. I don't want to go crazy on that because I think their bench is kind of lacking, but I think they have an offense that could crack the top 15 in the NBA. I think their talent is that good. And I think their defense is where most would say no chance. They're just going to hemorrhage repeatedly. But I can see the floor being that bad. But that's also a team
Yep.
that even when Ingram was there, and it was Ingram and McCollum and Valanciunas, none of which you would say is really like a great defensive player. They always just kind of outperform defensively where you thought they'd be. They had a couple top 10 defensive finishes in that 2021 through 2023 range. And
Yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with sort of how they can scheme it up. And I think it has a lot to do with Herb Jones. So Herb is there. And again, I think with the right injury luck for sure. I think Sadiq Bey is a subtly very important player for them off their bench. Like, they're going to have to stay healthy enough to keep their rookies in check. If all of a
Mhm.
sudden Queen and Fears are playing 20 minutes a night, they're both sides of the ball are going to really suffer for it. And that's where there's some danger with this pick. But if they stay healthy enough to keep those guys in check, I could see a defense maybe around 20 or perhaps even, you know, 17, 18-ish, and an offense maybe between 12 and 15. And that is mediocrity city, but mediocrity city destroys 30 and a half wins. So
It does.
that's my Pels case.
Yeah. So on the podcast that I recorded with Charlie, we did most improved picks, and I decided to campaign for Zion Williamson because he is skinny. He is in a contract year. That's right, a contract extension eligible year. The motivation is there. I can just see him really embracing the fact that this is quite a like low pressure season, all things considered. No one's looking at this team and go, well, they could really be the dark horse in the West as they had been for the past sort of 2 to 3 seasons prior. You can just tell me that he's going to average 30 points per game on 60% true shooting. Like you said, he's going to have all this gravity for decent shooters in like Jordan Poole and Sadiq Bey and Jordan Hawkins if he gets out there, and obviously Trey Murphy, an elite shooter if he gets out there. There is just a formula to where they they roll the variance dice 82 times and they play with enough high variance that the 30 wins should, in my mind, actually be surpassed. Obviously, if Zion gets injured, what a big if. Perhaps this, is jeopardized. But I agree. I think this is a savvy pick, and it's one that figured for me as well.
Excellent. To you, my man.
Um, the gut punch happened 1 year today, and I'm going to go back to the Charlotte Hornets, and I'm going to tell you that I am optimistic that they could beat their 27 and a half over, because who doesn't want to be optimistic? Who doesn't want to be romantic
How can you not be romantic
about
about LaMelo Ball, you know?
a starting lineup of LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges, Ryan Kalkbrenner? I just think that they're going to be incredibly fun. I think that Charles Lee is going to direct them to take as many threes as possible. Again, they're going to play a high variance game. I think that they're going to have a ton of shot creation on the roster when you consider the fact that like Colin Sexton is going to come off the bench. Trey Mann is still there, and Trey Mann actually looks like all right from an offensive standpoint last year when he was healthy. The front court is in need of repair. It's in need of bolstering. Like I really rookie team bet because of the opportunity that he's going to get and because of the fact that 7'1" drop centers have in the
Hmm.
past actually figured quite well in these conversations. Moussa Diabate is one of the most impactful offensive rebounders in the NBA. His team sort of see monumental shift when he gets on the floor because he can just hammer those boards. So, despite the fact that they haven't done this in the last couple of years, I believe that they had a 27 win season, not last season, not the season before, but 3 seasons ago, back before it was getting really bad. If LaMelo is healthy, and again, another one of those big ifs, I think that they're going to be really fun, really sort of analytics focused in terms of that shot profile as well. And they're all just sort of like young enough and healthy enough that I think the offense could carry them past 27 and a half.
Yeah. So uh I I have been leaning over on them. At
Mm-hmm.
one point I was like fully in the train with you, and I ranked Knippel second on my board. I love
Yep.
Con Knippel. I think that the offense has a very sort of tasty ceiling because like Brandon Miller as a shooting talent, LaMelo as a shooting and scoring talent, Con to as like an immediately viable connector.
Mm.
There's a lot there. I mean, a lot. And Kalkbrenner, if he plays a good amount, like that dude can finish around the rim. I mean,
Yep.
he has like a 7'6" wingspan and can stretch a little bit too. Like you could, if you were to tell me the Charlotte Hornets had a top 10 offense this year, I'd be
Mm.
surprised but not stunned. I think the talent is there for it. But they are one of the few teams where I think it is very likely that their defense is quite poor. I think
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
like Kalkbrenner wouldn't have to come in and be an instantly positive defensive player for them to stay out of like the bottom 5 or 6 on defense. And if the defense is that bad, the offense just has to be so good to overcome the hole that they're being put in every game. I also think that their acquisition of Colin Sexton, I think Colin Sexton is kind of like a hitcher under sleeper cell. Nothing against Colin. Well, I mean, something against Colin. That's not a nice thing to say, but
Yeah.
he is an efficient scorer and
Yeah.
he tries like so hard. So there's no question that he's an NBA player. And because of those two qualities, coaches play him a lot, but he is so small and so ineffective as a defensive player that he just ends up being sort of like a backup point guard who plays way too many minutes to be a backup point guard. And I think like that's where I worry is if all of a sudden he's getting tons of minutes over Knippel, for example, and
Yep.
like it's him and LaMelo in the backcourt to close a lot of games, that's
Mm-hmm.
where I start to get kind of squeamish. Um, Josh Green, Grant Williams, they do have some sort of veterans who can provide some stability on defense. Uh, and I think low key, Kalkbrenner gets the attention for being their guaranteed second round rookie, but they have another second round rookie who got a fully guaranteed deal named Sion James from Duke, who played with Knippel and played with Cooper Flagg, who is a switchblade prospect, who I think will have a chance to actually play in their rotation, play real minutes as a very physically gifted switchblade prospect. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, I think there are certain buttons that Charles Lee can push. And like I said, I lean over. I just do kind of worry about how Sexton is deployed and about how bad that defense is going to be if, you don't get the upper kind of outcome for Kalkbrenner, Sion James, uh, and like injury outcomes for like Josh Green and Grant Williams. It's like low key a lot of players to figure out. Like Tejan Salon is a second year guy who they picked sixth. They're probably going to keep playing him because they picked him sixth, and he tries really hard. So like
Yep.
it's low key a weird roster to juggle for Charles Lee. But I'm interested to see it. They're very high on
It's
League Pass. I want to believe. I definitely want to believe.
it's hard. They lost some defensive talent halfway through last season, like Cody Martin, Mark Williams, Grant Williams. Obviously, like leaves the team injured in effect. But they were 13th in defensive rating pre All-Star last year, and to my mind, they did not have a ton of defensive talent there. They were still
True.
playing,
True.
just LaMelo. They're still playing LaMelo. It's enough to drag any defense down. But like
Actually,
I,
shout out KJ Simpson as well, as someone
yeah,
who's held
yeah.
on with them, who I think should have been MVP of Summer League and is like he's like a veteran backup point guard who, again, if the right levers are pressed, could help that defensive rating and bench minutes as well.
The thing that could sort of kick my butt here is if, let's say, Con is not ready, kind of in like a, not to
I
do the
refuse to
aesthetic
entertain that. I
bias, not
refuse to entertain that possibility. But go
not
ahead.
not to do the aesthetic bias thing, but in the same way that like Reed wasn't necessarily ready last year, and obviously those two teams in a very different context. And they have a bad start to the season where it's clear that they are going to very much struggle to get involved in the playoff race. It's still feasible for them to say, "Hey, what's another year tanking for lottery odds? What's another year sort of turning our attention to college a little bit more than we are our back half of the NBA season?" So it could go wrong in that way, but I just think that if they're fun and if they're feisty to start the year, and if health um health permits, I do think they could flirt with like the end of the play-in race in the East, because I really
Hmm.
can't call the East. Like there are plenty of teams where with the West I was fairly confident ranking it. And with the East, I was like, okay, I think I know what Cleveland, Orlando, the Knicks, the Hawks, the Bucks, Pistons, Raptors, Celtics, and Hornets are going to be. And then I didn't really want to talk about the 76ers. I've got no read on the Pacers, the Nets, the Wizards, and then you've got like the Heat, who are going to be the Heat, and you've got the Bulls as well, who I can't predict either this year. So it's just it's a morass at the bottom of that conference where it doesn't take a lot to start to see your season pick up in a similar kind of way that like Toronto's season picked up last year. When everyone else is easing off, you can put your foot on the gas pedal, and suddenly you can start to build some positive momentum towards the end of the season.
Yeah, yes, I think the pivot potential is there for the team,
Mm.
especially because they do not have a stud wing player, which is what the draft is for. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe some people think that Brandon Miller is that guy. I think that Miller is a gifted offensive player, but I ranked him, I think, fifth in his draft year because I
Mm.
did not think that he was a stud athletic talent. And so and I think that largely has borne out. Some of the players I had above
Mm.
him may not have borne out, but my read on him, I think, has somewhat borne out. So I again, I want to believe they might be a 26-27. Oh, now they've won 40 plus games kind of
Yeah.
team.
Here's the
But
leap.
you're right. All right. I have two picks left. I can just discuss them in tandem, I suppose. And I
Go
actually
for
have
it.
three cases I want to make, and I will let you choose because
Okay.
I don't want to overlap with you. The three overs, and I'm sticking with overs. The only under I really want to talk about was the Kings. Like there are so many teams. Like I think it will be a challenge for the Knicks to hit their over. I could talk about their under, but like there are just some teams that are priced, I think, towards their ceiling. I think the Lakers are priced towards their ceiling because I can't see their defense
100%.
being that good. I think the Knicks similarly. I think their defense again is probably going to be middle of the pack. I think the Nuggets defense is again going to be middle of the pack. And even though
Hmm.
all those teams are offensively gifted, I like if you're in the case of the Knicks and the Nuggets, if you're supposed to win 53 or 54 games or something like that, and your defense is just mediocre, your margin for error is surprisingly slim to hit your number. The Lakers have a lower over under and they have Luca, but with all of this LeBron injury lingering kind of thing, and
Hmm.
with Aiton just so involved, I I go back and forth on
I
them. I think they might hit their over, but I also think, you know, I'm higher on the Spurs than I am on them. Spurs, Clippers, Nuggets, Wolves, Rockets, Thunder, that already puts them in the play in. Um, like I think it'll be hard, but I want to make over cases here. Those are my thoughts on those teams. Sorry, fans of those
Cool.
teams. The three overs I would like to make, and you pick two of them, are the Bulls, who you mentioned. You don't know what to do with them.
Yep.
The Wizards and
Yep.
the Portland Trailblazers. So out of those three, which two would you like me to conjure right now?
I, I just love it. I love that we've come on for our big season preview. And we're rounding out with who do you want me to talk about? The Chicago Bulls, the
That's right.
Washington Wizards,
That's
or the
right.
Portland Trail Blazers?
This is where you go for that. That's right.
I feel like I've probably got the best handle on Portland, and I ended up being a little bit more negative towards them when I ended up thinking about the Western Conference. Like they're a
Okay.
10 for me at the moment. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Bulls because I think we agree on one thing, and I'd like to sort of talk to you about that.
Mm,
Um, and let's hear about the glorious Wizards as well. So
that's
I'm
right.
opting for Bulls and Wizards, please, sir.
Way to go. I've also recorded a Blazers centric podcast, so that's good. My thoughts will be out there on that. Thank you, Jack.
Anytime.
We recorded on your feed several months ago about stocks, player stocks, like
Yeah.
actually where is a stock now as opposed to being like whatever. Dylan Harper Island. I bought all the stock, and it's like, do you know how a market works? He was the second pick in the draft. But
Yeah.
the
I bought
this
all
is
of OpenAI. I've got lots of OpenAI at the moment. That's what I've gone for.
yeah. This is the two of the players who I highlighted as guys who I would buy in that um in that episode were Montes Buzelis and Keyshawn George.
Yeah.
And I believe very strongly in both of them in year two. I think they are both. I think Montes is the best player in that draft. I think Keyshawn is like a top 7 player in that draft at lowest. Uh, both wings with ball handling chops who have really good underrated hand placement and feel on defense. Matas is the more athletically gifted and he's the bigger of the two, but I think both of them are going to take steps into where they are clear and maybe even positive. I'm more confident in Matas, but maybe even positive starters this season. The Bulls win 39 games like every year without fail. Um, they exchanged Lonzo Ball for Isaac Okoro, and Isaac Okoro was very boring, but he knows how to play defense and is like a rotational connector on offense. They re-signed Trey Jones. Trey Jones is pretty boring, but he knows how to play point of attack defense and maintain a healthy assist to turnover ratio. Uh, they just have, again, enough options to where they're going to want to run. And that pace can wear teams out in the regular season if you're not really ready to play them. And
Mm.
that's Giddy and Buzelis sort of leading that charge, but Kobe White can play that way. Asenge,
Hmm.
if he gets any time at all, is going to play that way. And like the Pels, they tend to outperform their defensive talent all of the time. They still have my guy Patrick Williams on the team for some ISO defense off the bench. And I just trust Billy Donovan to get more than 32 and a half, which is their number. So that's that team. The glorious 20 and a half whiz. Again, I think it is very, very funny when over-unders are discussed and you get to bad teams and you're like, under, this team's bad. Yes,
Yes.
the idea behind the exercise is that the line makers are predicting just how bad a team is going to be, and 20 and a half is really bad. This is a
Yes.
team that started 3 rookies last year, 3 rookies, and had Kyle Kuzma. 3 rookies and Kyle Kuzma, and they got to 18 wins.
Hmm.
And if you replace Kyle Kuzma's veteran leadership with that of CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton, 2 efficient professional offensive players, and you give all those rookies another year to go from, negative to approaching neutral, or in Keyshawn's case, maybe positive. In Alex Sarr's case, maybe positive on the defensive end, maybe by this year. and you add Trey Johnson, who is like a real shot maker who should at least, I think, help their offense from where it was last year, which was really brutal, then like I think 26 wins is very, very possible, which would again blow their number out of the water. That is where I'm coming from on this. They are not gonna have like a very good offense, and I think their defense is probably holds more promise because of Sar and Koulibaly
Mm.
and Keyshawn out of their two halves, but will still probably be no better than 20th. But like this will be a team that is no longer an embarrassment and more like a below average NBA team. And to me, like again, anywhere from 25 to 30 wins, I think is very, very possible. And so because of that, whiz over, those are my cases.
With the Wizards as well, there's like a motivation thing of once we have top three lottery odds, we don't have to sit Bub Carrington because he's started to show, some positive signs that he's going to help us win games in March and April. I do wonder if this year there will be an emergent class right at the bottom in terms of win totals, to where these teams can play a bit freer than some tanking teams have sort of in the past. So that will be a chance where they're not like absolutely sort of clutching at every single loss towards the end of the year. And they're also another variance case where, like you said, they've got so much young talent on the roster. We don't necessarily know who's going to leap where. If you asked a year or two ago, like, oh, is the 24th pick in the 2024 NBA draft going to be a meaningful rotation player for someone? The reputation of that draft, you'd have probably said no. It's now looking like Keyshawn George is going to be good. I'm not writing off Alex Sarr as of yet. I really like Bub Carrington. I think he's shown some really positive flashes. I'm not out on Bilal Coulibaly despite a probably a stock low
Yeah, I'd say
Eurobasket
so. Yeah.
performance. Right, like he's great around the rim, and then unfortunately he has to play away from the rim as well on the offensive end. Yeah, they've got good veteran talent on that team. Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum, that can really sort of lead them in the same way that you said, not in the way that Kyle Kuzma did. So I like the Wizards pick, and like you said, if they win 21 games, 22 games, they've beat the over. It's
Right.
not a bad pick. And with Chicago, like for some reason, Arturas Karnisovas gets a lot of flack. I'm not quite sure why, but the one thing that I do admire about his like team building philosophy is I do think he's looking at it with the premium picks as I want to build towards a physical and athletic superiority, and ideally we'll marry that with some skill as well. Like when you look at Giddy, when you look at Buzelis, these are players that profile as players that can handle the ball and are above the typical size and dimensions for players that will typically handle the ball for teams. And they can get up and down, they can turn games into a track meet. Kobe White was actually the leader in transition points scored last year
Mm-hmm.
in the entire NBA. Like took that from Giannis Antetokounmpo for the first time since he sort of broke out as an MVP level player. So I get the Bulls argument, and like you said, we know where their motivations are going to lie. They're not going to throw in the towel towards the end of the year. I do worry about Matas. Like I've just looked at his preseason numbers. I really think that there is an aptitude towards scoring. He, as it stands, has registered 0.6 assists per game in five preseason games for the Chicago Bulls. Like he really is he may be a Bull don't stop favorite in some time, but the other argument would be he's nearly at 60% shooting from the field and 40% shooting from three and 80% from the line. And if a player with that like movement capability, and I think the creativity in some of their gathers and some of their moves around the rim starts to really figure it out, then we could be in for like a really, really fun Buzelis season. So yeah, I think that they are perfectly savvy picks. Do you want me to round us out?
Yes, please. And then I will have to cut off a bit earlier than anticipated, but yes, yes. Give me your last one.
Um, I'm going to restore some sort of preseason preview sheen to this, and I'll say that the OKC Thunder smashed past 62 and a half. Um, I
Yeah, for the diehards who stayed through. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course. It's
for the
great.
diehards who stayed, I think that the Oklahoma City Thunder will win the championship this year. I think that Shea Gilgeous-Alexander will repeat as MVP. And
Cool.
I think that we are at the stage in the NBA 2K, My Manager, or whatever they call it, save, where it gets boring and you turn the game off because you have like four guys in your starting lineup who are 90 plus overall. You've got a bench that runs 10 deep and they're all really good, and you've still got picks left. And you're like, well, I guess my team is just going to win 65 to 70 games a season and I'll be able to
Hmm.
sim through everything. Like AJ Mitchell is still in
Yeah,
one
good.
preseason game, 16 points off the bench. He shouldn't have even been at like Summer League, or he should have been retired from Summer League after a game or two. And for some reason, he played like 5 or 6 games last year. Brooks Barnheiser is going to contribute for this OKC Thunder team. Of all the teams in
I
the
don't know
world that
about
needed
that.
Brooks
I'm
Barnheiser,
not, I'm not sure.
if
I mean,
if
I like
needs
him
must,
fine,
if
but
needs must, you know, of all the teams in the world that needed like a scrappy physical wing forward player that can really attack at the point of attack, the OKC Thunder were behind absolutely everyone, yet they've still added. I'm really excited to watch Chet this year. I think that there's no reason to expect that Shea's play will dip, and in fact, he could come back at an even slightly higher level because of his age profile. Interesting to see how Jalen Williams shoots post wrist surgery, because obviously the season before last he had insane efficiency numbers where he was up towards like the 65% true shooting
hmm.
mark, and those dipped. But it turns out those dipped because he was playing with an injury that a lot of players would sort of retire from the season from, except he went and helped them win an NBA championship. So OKC will smash past their 62.5 win total. I would expect it somewhere around the 66 plus mark. And you echoed this sentiment on my podcast a year ago when we did sort of opening week takeaways. You said, I think that this team could win 70 games. I don't think that this team has changed much from then. So I
Hmm.
expect that they're going to be insanely good once more.
Yep, I agree. Not much to add. I agree with Shea repeating his MVP.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just with these sky high overs for the top teams, you're just worried about injury. That's all. Because injury
Yeah.
can just have a pretty clear effect on some of that. But
Mm.
the Thunder are incredible, and they had bad injury luck last year, and it didn't matter at all. So, every sort of, I think there are three. I'm boiling it down a little bit, but I think there are three archetypes in the game now that matter so much towards winning games in the regular season and in the playoffs. Your star initiator really, really matters. And
Yep.
the Thunder, in terms of guards, like on ball guards, have probably the best one in the league. Your ability to play five out really, really matters. And the Thunder play five out, you know, just about as well as anyone. The Nuggets with their brand of it probably are a bit more
Mm.
polished, a bit more confident in tight games with it. But
Mm-hmm.
Chet as a five out weapon is excellent. And Jalen Williams as a backup, low key, is not that bad at it either.
Yep.
Chet should get better. Hartenstein is not quite the shooter. Obviously, he's not the shooter, but brings his own brand of sort of margins winning ball with his positioning, with his toughness, offensive rebounding, interior passing. And the third archetype is, I think, switchblade guards, the ability to disrupt perimeter actions on the other team.
Have they got any
And
of those?
The Thunder have pardon me.
Have they got any of those?
Yeah, they've got the best group of those probably that the league has ever seen in on
Yep.
one team. And it is the mandate and challenge of every other team to
Catch
match
up.
that crew. Caruso, Dort, Case and Wallace, those three guys are so good and so disruptive, each in their own way, an all defense candidate that
Mm.
uh, it's just a massive advantage night after night after night after night. I think earlier this decade, the Celtics got pretty high with Drew Holiday and Derek White being a matchup advantage every single night with the
Mm.
brand of defense they played. And, the
Plus
they're,
the wings.
I mean, the wings are great, but the wings
Yep.
allow you to play those guys at 1 and 2. You don't need to
Yes, that's true.
search for offensive initiation with those two. And the Thunder are in the
Mm.
same boat because Shea allows you to again be choosier with the perimeter guys you play around him. And
Mhm.
I just, it's guys like Aaron Wiggins, who I think is very underrated, who I took in that stock episode, and Isaiah Joe. These guys are just such luxuries, and they can come in and play real minutes. So I think I would certainly pick their over. I think their ceiling is around 70. I totally get it. I just hope they stay healthy. But yeah. And as a title pick, I will say it's just about picking the West, really, and I'll pick the Thunder
Mm.
again. I mean, I don't have a reason
Mhm.
really not to. I've been a bit softer on the Nuggets in previous episodes. Y'all can check that, but I think that the Thunder are the most complete team, and I would have them over the Cavs. I think the Cavs do get out of the East, but I would say Thunder over Cavs.
Not Orlando.
Not yet. Not yet. Let's win a playoff series. Let's win a playoff series. But yeah, I
No, I
would
agree. I
that's
think the Cavs are the pit for the East as well.
yeah. I think it'd be fun to pick someone like the Hawks, but I still think they're maybe a year early from going
Mm.
all there. But okay, Jack, thank you very much. This is great. Drop Step NBA podcast, Celtics blog, at the Drop Step NBA on Twitter. You're the man. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Bar a 5-year anniversary, I'm here for you day and night. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone
Yeah.
listening to Chuck. Sing his praises. He's one of my favorite podcasts out there, and I'm just happy that I get to come on once in a while.
Okay. This has been Chucking Darts. It's okay to be wrong about sports. Find your dartboard and start chucking.